Survive and advance. The Gamecocks do just that, taking care of Arkansas this afternoon to advance now to the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Weaver, live in Nashville, Tennessee at Bridgestone Arena as the Gamecocks had their first game of the SEC tournament today, and now they will play Auburn on Friday. Joe, it really was a tale of two halves when you look at this Gamecock team. And you look at that first half, Arkansas had an opportunity to play yesterday, so you knew naturally that they were going to be able to come out, have the rust a little bit knocked off them in comparison to the Gamecocks, who were going out there playing in their first game of this tournament. And it felt like that was the case in the first half. On top of that, I felt like from a style standpoint, Arkansas, we heard from Michi Johnson just yesterday, before even knowing if they were going to play Arkansas, but said if they do play the Hogs, that one thing in particular that they would have to do a good job of is making sure they can slow them down in transition, because Arkansas, that's how they want to beat you. Gamecocks, they struggled with doing that in the first half, at least at the start of the game. But I felt like as the game played out, they were able to slow them down. And not just that, they were able to slow down in general and to be able to play their style of offense. And as we know, we've heard so much about the Gamecocks offense this year and the way that Lamont Paris wants them to play, which is being able to control the tempo, slow things down. And that's exactly what they did. And once they got into the second half, that rust, it was knocked off. And we saw what happened in the second half as the Gamecocks just were able to absolutely roll, going on to get the win 80-66, outscoring Arkansas 42-31 in the second half.
Yeah, Mike, very big win for South Carolina. You advance, and they said with Auburn tomorrow, a team that beat you by 40 at Auburn. I think, it helps that it's on neutral site. We'll get into the Auburn talk, I'm sure, later in the show, but really big win for South Carolina today. They were able to put that car, the offense, the car in neutral there in that second half, right? Slow things down the way they want it. And you saw them prevail, right? They allowed Arkansas to just kind of beat themselves in that second half while South Carolina stayed in within themselves, hit a bunch of big shots. I mean, Talon Cooper, that fadeaway jumper, the two in double coverage was a huge shot, right? Kept things exactly where you wanted it for South Carolina. And again, just controlling the game down the stretch is what impresses me the most about this win. And, if you continue to do that, I mean, I don't care who you're playing, Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, if you're able to control the game like you did in the second half today, you can beat anybody in the country.
When I look in that first half, a couple things that stood out to me. We heard from BJ Mack yesterday. He was asked from multiple reporters, but what do you tell the younger players who have never experienced playing in an SEC tournament? Now, obviously for Mack, I should say conference tournament, because this was his first SEC tournament, but have not experienced playing in a conference tournament before. And you think of a guy like Colin Murray-Boyles and what he's been able to do this season, especially over the last couple weeks and months. What was he going to look like today? Were there going to be some nerves from him? That was not the case. He came out hot early, 9 points within the first 9 minutes, less than 9 minutes, and finished with 24 points on the day. Certainly one of the bright spots for the Gamecocks, not just the game team high, but a game high, 24 points, 4 steals, 7 rebounds. If you really want to nitpick one thing in particular that he could have done a better job in, just trying to limit the fouls a little bit. He's aggressive, had 4 fouls, but I say that because certainly as they get ready for Auburn, you need him. You can't afford to lose him. So like the aggressiveness, just try to be a little smart, though, against Auburn tomorrow, because he has certainly been one of the stars for this Gamecock team. Again, especially over the last couple weeks and months.
Yeah, absolutely. CMB, very big game, right? Who I expected to, stick out in a game like this, the first game of the SEC tournament, first game, in this team's tournament run. But CMB, I mean, hell of a job on freshman, right? Stepping up on the biggest stage when your team needs him the most. Did a pretty good job rebounding the ball again. Mike, to your point, you want to stay a little bit cleaner on the fouls. But, again, very, very big game from CMB defensively. The 4 steals kind of sticks out to me. Obviously, leading all scorers in points with 24. But his defensive effort is really what propelled South Carolina. They like their matchup down in the post with a little bit of a pick and roll and kind of swinging and just kind of go to the bucket, right? With CMB, with BJ, and then with Josh Gray, you saw Josh Gray had a couple dunks there in that second half, but they were just trying to isolate the game, trying to get open looks. And, South Carolina kept finding it. Also, shout out to the guards too, kept setting that up. Those passes had to be on point. And then also, South Carolina really attacked the glass. CMB was a very, very big part of that in the second chance points. I'm pulling them up right now, Mike, but they were very hard lean in South Carolina. Reverse the second chance. So, when you control the glass, you control the rest of the game. So huge
Joe,
day for Murray Boyd for the kid.
You talk about defensively, what really changed once they got into the second half, outside of the fact that South Carolina was able to knock off some of that rust, right? Playing in your first SEC tournament game while the team that you're playing had an opportunity to play the day before. Once they switched up to that 1-3-1, it felt like Arkansas was just a deer in the headlights. They didn't know what the hell to do. And we've seen that multiple times this season from the Gamecocks. And what I really like about it is, obviously at this point of the year, teams understand what the scouting report is in South Carolina. They know that South Carolina has done that multiple times this year. But yet, Paris continues to go back to it because he has confidence. And it goes back to what you just said. Guys started to play defense more, right? You need to be able to play defense. We heard yesterday, I think it was either Talon Cooper or it may have been Michi saying one thing in particular about this team, one thing in particular about playing for Lamont Paris. If you don't play defense, your butt's going to be on the bench. Your butt's going to be on the bench. So we've seen it a couple times this year with South Carolina where they go into the break at halftime, whether they're in a close game, whether they're down, and they come out and they just look like they're playing with their hair on fire. That's what it felt like today. But some of that, again, has to go back to the fact that they were playing that 1-3-1 defense, and they were able to really confuse Arkansas, trap them a little bit, force turnovers, and to be able to, again, make Arkansas feel uncomfortable, which I felt like at the beginning of the game, they felt very comfortable until they were able to slow the tempo down and be able to control the game in the manner in which they wanted to. Do you have some of those stats, Joe?
I'm sorry.
You said, yeah, we were able to get some of those stats?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, second chance points. It's big. Offensive rebounds, South Carolina led Arkansas 12-4. And then also points off turnovers. That's something to keep an eye on. South Carolina had 17 points off turnovers. And then Arkansas's 9. Fast break points was also in South Carolina's favor, 10-6. The paint also adds up, too. South Carolina scored 52 points in the paint to Arkansas's 38. Like I said, Mike, a little bit earlier before my Wi-Fi had some action. South Carolina really controlled that game in the paint, and they have the size to do it. Josh Gray and the horse, right? Like they are big enough and lengthy enough, a team to do that, right, against a lot of other teams in the SEC. And we saw Ole Miss practicing with one of their assistant coaches yesterday, obviously to try to get more post presence to prepare for this tournament. Because if your post players can last all tournament and make it to Sunday, that's a huge step up, right? So it's going to be the big guys what this weekend is going to come down to, and certainly South Carolina executed on the glass and in the front court today as well.
As you guys can hear, they're really setting the moon here at Bridgestone Arena and some of the music that they're playing. So hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'll speak up. Joe, you got me? Feel like you can hear me good and clear? Good. So, look, I feel like with this team, and we heard yesterday some of the players talking, whether it was BJ Mack, whether it was Michi talking about on Tuesday, shortly after the team arrived here, he's walking through Broadway and he was grabbing some pizza. And he felt like teams and people are out there, are still disrespecting this team. They still don't believe in the Gamecocks. They feel like, oh, it's a fluke. Some of the things that they've been able to accomplish so far. So what that tells me is, look, 26 wins. And by the way, 26 wins now it ties the program record with that 2016-17 Final Four team. Certainly the Gamecocks are looking ahead to tomorrow. They're going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, so they're going to have an opportunity to break that mark, but one thing at a time, right? First things first, take care of our Auburn tomorrow. I was just really impressed, though, with how this team was able to bounce back after a loss against Tennessee, come out, not play necessarily the hottest style of basketball in the first half, but then they were able to show you why they were able to get 25 wins in the regular season, why they finished tied for second in the SEC, why they have a ranking next to the name, why they were able to knock down Tennessee on the road, why they were able to take down Kentucky at home. It's because they don't get so caught up in everything around them. Yes, players always say it. They want to find ways to get motivated. If that's one thing in particular that they're going to continue to look at and say, we continue to feel disrespected, that's fine. They're not the first team to do that. That's fine. But I think more than anything, Joe, the fact that this team does not get too high, does not get too low, and they're just able to flush things and move forward speaks volumes.
It's
Lamont
huge.
said it yesterday. This thing is what really impresses me when you look at this team. They've been able to accomplish so much this year. 11 wins last year, 25 this year. Only once this season have they lost back-to-back games. I know they had some extra time in between Tennessee and then getting ready for today, but they're able to flush things. They're able to move forward. It is massive. And obviously at this point of the year, whether it's the SEC tournament, whether it's the NCAA tournament, you lose, you go home. You lose tomorrow, you're going home from the SEC tournament. You lose in March Madness, your season's done. But this team continuing, again, not getting too high, not getting too low, flushing things and moving forward, I think that's another thing that really helped them out today. It looks like Joe is having some Wi-Fi issues, so I'm going to let Joe get that taken care of. But again, South Carolina, if you're just joining us, they're able to take care of Arkansas today in Nashville, their first game of the SEC tournament. In the first half, Arkansas was able to control the tempo for, I'd say, a good portion of the first half. But South Carolina was able to slow things down, play the style of basketball that we've seen them play throughout the course of the season, the style of play that has allowed them to be as good as they've been this season. And that was certainly the case once they were able to get into the second half. Looks like Intern Joe's going to try to join us again. You got us,
Yep.
Joe?
Yeah, I got you. Sorry about that. Again, everyone's
No,
on
Joe,
Wi-Fi
we're talking about being able to play their style of basketball.
Yeah.
Auburn had the opportunity because of the tiebreaker of not having to play until tomorrow. That could have been a spot South Carolina would have had. Auburn had a chance to be able to watch them today. Bruce Pearl, Auburn's head coach, had a chance to join the halftime show on the SEC Network, shared his thoughts on what South Carolina was doing right. What do you expect tomorrow when these two teams play?
Yeah, Mike, I expect a really, really good game. I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as the first. They're playing Auburn on a neutral court. I think it certainly favors South Carolina a little bit that you have them on the SEC, and then also South Carolina is they're comfortable now, right? All the first game jitters are out of the way. I think sure you could have been in that 4 spot and had that double bye, but you had to play the game and you handled it with business, right? You were in control of it the whole way, so. These guys are going to be, a little less rested than Auburn, sure, but you have a game under the belt. They have the confidence that they can win in this tournament, right? Different from last year for sure. This team's going in the right direction. What do I really expect tomorrow? I really think it's going to be a close game. I think these two teams match up really, really well. I think, South Carolina, if they can bring the same post presence that they did, they'll match up really well with Auburn. And again, the guards in South Carolina and continue their play. Didn't shoot the ball too well today. A couple of shots, but again, guards just coming in clutch and well off of each other. And if they can keep that going, I think it's really good tomorrow.
Taking a look at some other stats from today's game that really stand out about South Carolina. Michi, from an offensive standpoint, I think he was held to just 4 points in the first half. That floater he had, I don't know if that was his first or second basket, but finished with 6 points. Offensively, Michi's held to 6 points, but South Carolina is still able to win by 14. I bring that up because earlier in the season, and don't get me wrong, if Michi is able to get going from an offensive standpoint, you want that. I mean, there's no question about that. You want Michi to get hot from an offensive standpoint. But earlier in the year, and even going back towards the end of the season, I know Michi had some games where he got going and was able to score double digits. He scored a couple multiple 20-point games. But I think being able to go through those experiences where Michi, the ball wasn't dropping for him, but yet he was able to contribute in other ways, whether it be his defense, whether it be a facilitator, creating assists, whether it be getting steals, whatever the case may be, because he was able to find a role when his shot wasn't dropping earlier in the year. Days like today shouldn't surprise you when South Carolina is still able to go out there and win by double digits, win by 14 in a case like today, because they've been in situations like that this year. And I think that speaks volumes of not just Michi. We've talked about this before. Not just Michi as a teammate and as someone that will do whatever the hell he needs to do to be able to help the team win, even if from an offensive standpoint things aren't going the way that he wants. But it also speaks volumes of the other guys around him and stepping up, right? We've said that multiple times with Colin Murray-Boyles. Over the last couple of months, he's really stepped up from an offensive standpoint. He's scoring more and more and more. He's getting more involved in the offense. That confidence level is stepping up, Joe. So what's just your takeaways as far as Michi offensively not getting going the way that we've seen him get going before, but yet the South Carolina team continuing to find ways to win in dominating fashion?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Michi, right, I don't think the offensive or the lack of offensive performance should scare anybody. You know, Michi was very big. I asked him yesterday, I'm like, what do you guys focus on when the shooting dries up, right? Especially when you're playing as many games in as many days. You know, he's like, we really just need to focus on our defense. You know, button every latch, right, making sure everything's covered. And then that'll lead to more offense. So this team thinks, like, you know, the better defense that they play, the more offensive possessions they're going to have, the more they can share the ball around, and just the better that they'll do, right? So I think when you're defensive focused, and especially you know, when you're playing as many games and as many days you are in the SEC tournament, it's a very, very, very good philosophy to have. And again, we saw that with Michi today. Didn't have the best offensive game, but you know, the players around him elevated because Michi, you know, did his job on the defensive end, right? The guards for Arkansas really didn't stand out too much, you know, other than Battle. You know, Battle was the biggest, you know, scorer with 20. Other than him, I think, you know, the guards did a pretty good job blocking down Arkansas's backcourt, excuse me. And so, you know, again, it's going to be the defensive effort that translates to other things for South Carolina, because they're a team made on defense. And again, give credit to Lamont Paris. And then also, you know, getting the contract extension today as well. But yeah, Coach Paris has these guys wanting to play defense and realizing too that you know, offensive buckets come off of defense, and it's a really, really, really good mentality to have when you got to go play Auburn tomorrow.
You got to play Auburn tomorrow. That game will tip off at the same exact time, 2:30 Eastern time, 3:30 Central if you're out here in Nashville. And I think that's another thing too, Joe. I know it won't get talked about a lot, probably, but having that same routine, playing at the same time, being able to go out there and look, they dominated today. Didn't have a hot start, really finished strong though in the second half. You're going to be waking up most likely at the same time, same routine, and you're going to be able to basically get your body back in a state of mind where it's like, hey, we did this yesterday. We're not having to change our routine as far as, okay, go to sleep a little bit earlier or whatever the case may be, wake up, have more downtime. It's the exact same schedule as it was yesterday. Now, certainly one thing that you have to be thinking about is if they want to make a deep run in this tournament, and I know the bottom line is you have to win tomorrow, but if you want to make a deep run in this tournament, you're gonna have to get production from your bench. It's gonna have to go deeper, right? And that's just because you're playing 1, 2, 3. You're playing 4 games in the span of 4 days if you're able to go deep. So obviously they have to win tomorrow, but these are the things that you start to think about, and not just making it to Sunday, but you just played a game yesterday. So how does that impact some of the minutes for some of those guys? It was good for South Carolina to be able to get out to the lead that they did because they were able to rest up some of the players down towards the stretch. But that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. And Lamont, he understands this isn't his first rodeo. He's coached in conference tournaments before. He's had success in conference tournaments before. He's had success in the NCAA tournament. He has experience. So he understands, hey, we played the day before. We're going to play tomorrow. But understanding that plays a role too. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see some numbers tomorrow from a time standpoint, some minutes changing up a little bit. That will be one of the reasons why. But obviously you want to go out there and you're trying to get a win because you get a win tomorrow, and we've talked about this before, if you're able to beat Auburn after winning today and winning in the manner in which they did too, South Carolina, depending on how some other things go, because you can't control with the net how other teams perform, but you could be sitting there making a strong case as to why you should be a 4 seed. But again, first things first, got to go out there and got to get the win tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think if this team, beats Auburn, right, the sky's the limit. They've beaten Tennessee, they've beaten Kentucky already. So Auburn's really the last domino that this team has to prove. Again, they were a top 5 team in this league for a reason. I think they have the potential to be able to beat anybody in this league. And so, I think if you get through tomorrow, you have a really, really, really good shot of winning the weekend. But yeah, it all starts with Auburn tomorrow. I think, that one's been circled when you kind of realize where you were going to be situationally in this tournament. So this team gets another crack at it, Mike. It'll be interesting to see how they respond. And I feel like too, the bench players that are, making an impact. I was, impressed with Josh Gray today. He kept the physicality up. I was a little concerned with, because he gets into tournament play, guys, take their foot off the pedal a little bit because they're playing so many games in so many days. But Josh Gray was lights out tight. And then, Zach Davis as well. I know Zach Davis, he's rotating off the bench. Started today for Miles Studi, but Davis and Studi, both great. I was, impressed with the role. Jacoby Ellis was also really, really, really good. Or Zach Davis.
Looks like we lost Joe again. We'll see if we can have Joe hop back on in a minute. Looks like his Wi-Fi went out. Tough Wi-Fi out here in Nashville. Let's see if we can get Joe back on, though. But, talking about Joe's point there, as we get Joe back on, talking about what the horse, Josh Gray, was able to give you today. 8 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. What I like about this team, Joe, and a guy like Josh Gray, he doesn't complain about his role. And it's not just Josh, but, that's a guy that's been around this program even before Lamont got here. It would be real easy for a guy like that to just get upset. And obviously, he's had multiple roles throughout his career at South Carolina. You go back to his first year here when he was playing for Frank. You look at his role last year. The talent that South Carolina has brought in, especially this year, it's impacted his minutes, of course. But yet, he continues to be someone that wants to go out there and do whatever he can. We talk about Michi Johnson a lot, but man, Josh Gray's right up there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. The horse, right? When the horse is physical, South Carolina does really well. And that's kind of what they wanted him to be. Just a big physical post presence. And when he can do that, South Carolina does well. And they find success in the post. And shout out to Josh Gray for having more of a, aggressive effort this year. I think it's been a 180 from what we saw from last year, a lot more aggressive. And Jay makes a good point. Josh started going up strong. He was trying to be soft with layups at first. He's a beast when he's in the paint. Yeah. I'm sure it's tiring with a guy, a body that size, to continue to have a workload like Josh Gray normally does. But, you're going to need him to be big. And, he's going to wear out this weekend. That's just going to happen, right? And so if you're Lamont, you're going to have to pick your spots a little bit with where you sub the horse in and out and really, want to change the game. But he was really, really, really good in this first game. And if he can continue to be even a shell of him, of what he was today, I think South Carolina is going to have a lot of success this weekend.
So we mentioned it before, but if you're just joining us, not only does South Carolina win in advance after taking care of Arkansas in their first SEC tournament game, play Auburn tomorrow at the same time, 2:30 Eastern on the SEC Network. But with the win today, South Carolina has notched their 26th win on the season, tying a program record with that 2016-2017 Final Four season. And I bring that up, Joe, because we've talked about all the incredible things this Gamecock team has done this year. And not just the fact of, 26 wins, 25 in the regular season, that's a program record. Okay, you had 11 wins the year before. You're plus 15, which is the most in terms of differential in program history as well. But this team continues to rewrite the record books. You've had a chance, not just yesterday, you had a chance to listen to them as well as I did when they met with the media. We've heard them throughout the course of the season. How do you think they continue to just ignore what they're accomplishing, because I think Lamont said it best yesterday. They're aware of what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know that what they're achieving
Oh,
or what they've already done,
absolutely.
they've been able to do some really special things, but yet they're not satisfied with it. It'd get real easy, but hey, you know what?
No.
We've done, and you let your foot off the gas, but this team continues just to go forward.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. This team still feels doubted, right? They still feel slighted, right? They got the ranking, right? And now, you know, they still have more to prove, right? Being in that 5 spot, nobody was talking about them, right? It's like, oh, South Carolina, you know, back to the normal stuff, you know, mid-tier team, and they're out here to prove, you know, everyone wrong, right? And prove why they got working so much hype when they were winning all those games, right? And again, they really didn't fall off as much as the, you know, kind of national media or all of the buzz around them, you know, gave them credit for, right? There were a couple tough losses down the stretch there, but again, you know, you hold it together, and I think today was a testament of that, right? This team is comfortable, they're playing well, chemistry is still intact, right? That's the main thing to staying hot in March, is when you can keep the chemistry intact. And I think everything that's going on with Lamont Perry and all the honors and recognition is just helping with that, right? Because this team loves their coach so much, and it's vice versa, right? I think, you know, Lamont is very invested with this team. It feeds from the top down. You can see the leadership feeding down to the players, and the players are responding to Lamont's leadership and just in general. It's taking them really far, and I think today was testament of it, right? They could have given up when Arkansas started coming back. They could have easily just folded there, and you know, gave up that lead down the stretch. But what they did was, you know, they got it back together on offense, hit a couple clutch shots when you needed to, and then just put the car in neutral. So they're all on one page, and that's a scary thing come March.
Also, if you're joining us, you get to hear some Carrie Underwood here courtside at Bridgestone Arena. Just sitting here, they're just blaring music, watching the guys come out. Just like Texas A&M slowly starting to come out. Ole Miss coming out here as well. I believe, if I see in front of me, Wildens Luedecke getting stretched out. The former Gamecock hopped around a little bit, went to UMass and joined Frank, and now he's over at Texas A&M. That game is coming up in just a little bit. But, Joe, when we look ahead to tomorrow now, this Gamecock team, they played Auburn earlier in the year. But we've talked about it. I talked about it with Jack. Going and playing at Auburn, one of the toughest places to play over the last couple of years. And that's not making excuses, but it's one of the most difficult places to play in college basketball when you look back on what they've done over there. Auburn, everything was working for them that day. They were making shots, you weren't. They had the home court advantage, and they were able to run it up on you. What do you expect to see from South Carolina tomorrow? Because I'm not anticipating tomorrow's game looking anything like we saw a couple weeks ago in Auburn.
No, absolutely not, Mike. Right? Again, we talked about the jungle and how much of a home court atmosphere that was. They had lost, going into the South Carolina game, they had lost 2 games in the past 2 years in the jungle. Right? I think it plays, and there is taboos in college basketball regular season. Right? I think that certainly played into it. They were comfortable. Auburn's comfortable playing at home, but now you get them straight up. Right? Now, if you're South Carolina, you're licking chops because you get to avenge this loss. You get the chance, to play them straight up when it all matters on a neutral court. Shout out to South Carolina made it up to Nashville because there are quite a bit of them. The Gamecock fans were loud during that first game, and I expect them to be even louder tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be a lot different, right? I think it'll be a lot closer, and certainly again we saw how South Carolina matched up with them in the first game, and the matchups really didn't play out the way you wanted it to, and just poor play on South Carolina's side. But now, again, they're probably looking their tops when they see Auburn and just the game that they have in front of them. Because if you win this game, if you're South Carolina and you win this game, like there are very, very big things ahead, right? So, very big things ahead.
So South Carolina will play Auburn tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern time. If you're here in Nashville, that is a 3:30 tip-off time. Again, that game will be played on the SEC Network. And as we mentioned before, the beauty with the South Carolina team is that you are able to have that same routine, that same schedule, and you're able to not have to worry about, okay, hey, we woke up a little bit early It's just one of those small things. Does that make the difference between whether South Carolina wins tomorrow or not? Certainly not. They're going to have to go out there. They're going to have to go up against a very good Auburn team. When you look at it, I mean, not to get too carried away here, but when you look at what South Carolina has to do in order to make it to the SEC championship of this tournament, not only having to win against a team today who at the beginning of the season was picked to finish towards the top, obviously it was the complete opposite, but you went through a very scrappy Arkansas team. That's what I would call it. First half, they gave you everything they had. But you have to go through Auburn tomorrow. Most likely, if you're able to win that game, you have to go through Tennessee on Saturday. It's not easy. It's not easy, but you can't be looking ahead. You have to be taking care of Auburn. And I think the beauty with this game, Joe, is this. I've seen in the past when teams, especially good teams, when two good teams meet, and one team just gets blown out in the regular season, sometimes that team that blew you out, they let their guard down a little bit. They let their guard down because they say, hey, we were able to beat them by 40 freaking points earlier this season. They're not going to be a challenge. So I bring that up because tomorrow you need to be able to come out and you need to be able to play fast. You need to be able to come out and play fast. You need to do exactly what Bruce Pearl was talking about at halftime against Bruce Pearl. You need to take advantage of Auburn, potentially, hopefully, having to shake off the cobwebs when they go out there and play in that first half. You got to take advantage of the first 20 minutes. So to me, no question you need to be able to play a full 40 minutes. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, you don't have to be freaking John Wooden to know that. But you got to come out there in the first 20 minutes because this is an Auburn team that, again, they've been in the last couple of days. Yeah, they've been practicing, but they haven't had a game in the last couple of days. You've had that opportunity. You need to come out and you need to be able to punch them in the face to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I don't think there's any other team in the country that would overlook South Carolina any more than Arkansas would, right? Arkansas beat them by 40 points earlier in the season. You guys got me? You hear me? Good. Yeah. There's no other team in the country that would overlook South Carolina more than Arkansas, right? A team that beat you by 40 points, they're going to come in a little bit complacent regardless of who you are, right? Because, you had an easy walk through. Now, Bruce Pearl's a great coach. He's not going to have these guys, thinking that they're going to walk all over him, right? They know South Carolina's going to give them a game, but there still is a thought like, hey, we beat these guys by 40 earlier. Like, you should be taking care of business. And that's all South Carolina needs, that little bit of edge, that little bit of motivation of them taking them lightly. And, that's really all they need. And South Carolina, playing good basketball, showed it. They trust each other, Mike. I think that's one of the bigger things, right? This team is playing cohesive, playing together. So today, again, being able to just control the game throughout that entire second half is what stands out to me. If South Carolina can get any little bit of that kind of magic against Auburn and be able to control the game throughout the stretch. If you have a lead or if it's close, still being able to hold on a game down the stretch is a massive thing for South Carolina.
So looking at Auburn's schedule over their last 4 or 5 games, they've won 4 of their last 5. That lone loss being a loss at Tennessee, 92-84. That was on February 28th. But after that, a win against Mississippi State, a dominating win at Missouri, 101-74, and then also a win against Georgia, 92-78 to close out the year. This is a team that's playing some good basketball right now. And obviously, when we talk about, there's Jack joining us. We'll get to Jack in a minute because he had an opportunity to sit in the post-game press conference, listening to the coaches as well as the players. But when you look at a lot of teams at this time of the year, you want to be able to play playing your best basketball. But with Auburn, you're going to get their best tomorrow. So South Carolina, again, they need to be able to come out. They have to be playing some of their best basketball in that first, I'd say really that first 5 minutes. I say that first 5 minutes, they have to come out and they really have to punch them in the face because if not, this is an Auburn team that as the game goes on, I expect them to be able to knock off whatever rust, if there is some rust, since they haven't played in about a week. But you got to come out there and you got to give them everything you got early on. Joining us now, Jack, you had a chance to be able to sit in the post-game press conference. What can you tell us? What are some of the takeaways?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? So I ended up going to the open locker room portion of me. Didn't end up getting to listen in to Lamont Paris and speak after the game, but talk to all the main guys, all the starting five pretty much. And Colin Murray Boyles is the big one. Apparently his shoe broke in the first half, and so he had to change that, but it didn't matter because he played tremendously well. And, he said he's making really good progress this season. And, maybe at some point he'll develop the three-pointer. He said he'd like to get that into his game next year. But we'll see what happens. But, just an overall great game. I think the guys are very happy with this game. Asked them a lot about that Auburn game a few weeks ago on Valentine's Day, and it left a sour taste in their mouth. And they've been looking forward to this game for a while now, and trying to get back on the right track. But they tell the vibes are good right now. And again, we heard all about it yesterday during the open practice about how much fun they were having and the energy and stuff, even keel. And that's the vibe that I'm still seeing with this team. And look, they didn't play their best, but at the same time, they were able to win by double digits. And you did it without making many three-pointers. You go for 15 from deep, and that is in my opinion. I think you can fix that. Guys like Michi Johnson and Talon Cooper are going to be your guys that go ahead and make those shots. And so if they're hitting them, who knows what happens? I think South Carolina is in a very good position right now. And when BJ Mack and guys like CMB are playing the way they are in the paint, and Zach Davis, this team could be very hard to beat.
Jack, I know I mentioned it to you when you were out here courtside. They switched it up to start the second half. They do that 1-3-1 trap, and we've seen it throughout the course of the year, especially to start the second half. Why does it just continue to give teams fits? They know it's coming. What is it about South Carolina just continuing to go out there? We heard yesterday the players say, hey, if you don't play defense, Lamont's not going to play you. There has to be more. They're motivated, of course, to play defense for them, but they just continue to have success, and teams know that they're going to throw it at them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I asked, I think, Talon Cooper about it specifically, and he was saying they changed the 1-3-1 with like a few minutes left in the first half, and they actually started out in man defense. And I think we saw Arkansas, shot over 50% in the field in the first half. And so you could tell a change was necessary. And again, I don't know why they just don't go with the 1-3-1 the whole way through. Maybe because they don't want to, they want the element of surprise still, even though it's not that much of a surprise because they'll go to it when things aren't going well. But teams haven't been able to stop it. And at some point, maybe that'll change. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a team at some point that figures out the code or, breaks the formula, whatever the case might be. But, Talon was saying specifically that really did change the course of the game. And again, it wasn't even the best day offensively, but this is a very defensive first team. And I think making that change was, again, it's like the third time it's happened this year. I think back to the road win at Georgia, the home win versus Florida, in this game, all games where you need to make a minor comeback. And it attributes to that 1-3-1.
Yeah, you mentioned the changes. There's multiple things that we could talk about when you start to really peel back the layer as to what has led South Carolina to the point where they're at right now. Right, you tie a program record, 26 wins in a season with that 2016-17 Final Four team, and you still have another game to play. At least 2 more games to play to be able to set a program record. But I think when we really start to look at Lamont Paris, what really stands out to me about this year has just been the adjustments, the changes they make, especially at halftime. We talked about the 1-3-1 today. You look back a couple weeks ago against Florida. They throw the zone at them. Florida didn't know what the hell was going on. So it's just continuing to keep teams off balance, kind of like a batter, and throwing that breaking ball in there to keep him with his knees buckling a little bit. So I've been very impressed with the adjustments. One thing I do want to add, Jack, we heard from some of the players yesterday and just how happy they are for Lamont. Lamont, talking about the SEC Coach of the Year, throws it right back on his players. I think I'm paraphrasing, but he said, my name's on it, but their name's on it as well. Their hard work, their equity, everything that they've put into it, their sweat, their name's on this as well. Our coaching staff. We see the news today, first reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN, that South Carolina is expected to be giving a big payday to Lamont tomorrow. Those numbers, it looks like it's going to be $4 million a year that would keep Lamont at South Carolina through the 2029-2030 season, which is just weird to say. We know that there's been an email sent out that there's going to be a meeting tomorrow for the Board of Trustees, so we expect that's what it's going to be about. What do you think that meant to the players today, though? Because they know what's going on. They see that. Everyone has one of these bad boys. They know that their coach is getting paid. Could you get a sense that they were like, hey, you know what? He's our guy. He's our guy. We're happy for him. Let's go out there and let's prove why this guy just received a big bag or is about to receive a big bag.
Yeah, and we heard it yesterday, even back then, about just like you heard Michi Johnson gloating about the way Lamont has, what he's meant to this team. And, a lot of people thought Michi was dumb when he came to South Carolina and, Lamont took a chance on him. And, look, you could say about a lot of guys on this team. I think just Lamont Paris has been such a big coach for this team. And I think, I don't know what happens if they are led by another coach out there or anything, but the fact that Lamont is, he's such a personable guy, it seems like, and he really connects well with these players. And I think that's something that you can't always find on the basketball court. Not the stats that those are the hidden stats, and just the way the players rally around him. I mean, you see it in the celebrations after the game where they dance and stuff and have the time of their life. And I think they're very happy to have him back for years to come.
You see me kind of looking off screen. You won't be able to see it here, of course, but Don Staley has arrived here in Nashville. Good to see the women's head basketball coach paying a visit to Nashville to support Lamont Paris in this Gamecock squad. Jack, appreciate it. We're going to continue to have Jack on throughout the tournament. Hopefully, it's not just today and tomorrow. We'll be doing GC Live shows all SEC tournament long. We'll be doing that as well for the NCAA tournament, not just for men, but for the women's program as well. Jack, appreciate you, buddy.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to hit some ads, Joe. We're going to wrap things up. Joe, let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Our first sponsor of the day is our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax ID is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, in Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for a refund, call them the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be wrong, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal.
And today's show is also brought to
you. Will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs this tax season.
And today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage. If you're in the process of purchasing a home, trying to find the lowest rate on the market, as you know, the last couple of years, the last 2 years in particular, hasn't been that easy. Hopefully those rates will start to drop soon. We want to make that process much easier for you. Do the same thing that our very own Wes Mitchell, as well as former Gamecock quarterback and captain Terry Orth did, when both of those two were looking for their home. They gave Clint a call, who's been a long-time supporter of not just Gamecock Central, but he's been the key sponsor in all these GC Live shows. You see that name above every GC Live show. That number, 803-771-6933. All right, Joe, final thoughts. Fill in the blank. South Carolina beats Auburn tomorrow if they're able to do what?
control the glass, control the glass, control the glass, control the glass. That's what killed them again. That's what killed them at Auburn, right? They just couldn't get it. They couldn't get a rebound, and then they couldn't run in transition. I think you need to do the same work you did on the offensive glass you did today. But if you can control the glass, I think it's going to go a long way. That's how you beat a good team like Auburn, right? You need to control the glass, because if you control the glass, you control the tempo. If you control the tempo, you control the game, Mike. So they have to do well on the offensive boards. Get gritty. You need to see the guards get in there a little bit. It can't all be CMB and Doc Gray. BJ Mack needs to step in, help out Zach Davis. Everyone, all hands on deck in on the glass, because if you can control the glass, you control the game. Because you have the tempo, you can run in transition if you want, you can slow it down, and then it also, allows South Carolina to just, run the offense that they want, run the speed that they want, and really, really take control of it, and just, play it the way that they want to, not the way that Bruce Pearl and Auburn want to. Because if you're playing that way, it's going to be a long, long afternoon for South Carolina. So control the offensive glass, Mike. I think they did a really good job of it today. And then if the shooting,
for me. And I know there's multiple ways to win, but I just feel like, especially with Auburn, they're gonna try to do everything they can to make life difficult for you in the paint. And I think for South Carolina, what they're gonna need to do, they're gonna have to get the three ball going. They're gonna have to shoot a hell of a lot better from behind the arc today. They're only 3 for 15. Certainly, it didn't slow them down, but they were able to do different things to this Arkansas team. When you look at the skill set from Auburn, though, a much different team. And I feel like really what South Carolina will want to do tomorrow is they're going to be playing outside in, really try to get that three ball going, and hopefully have Auburn come out and defend them on the perimeter to soften up the paint so that they can go down there more so in the second half. But I think they have to do a hell of a lot better job from a three-point standpoint. We know how much this team values shooting the three. It's one of those analytical things, right? I mean, we talked about it with the Boston Celtics. NBA teams are really doing it a lot now. We're starting to see it trickle down into the college game, which is, okay, you take more threes, the opportunities will, again, this is from an analytical standpoint. I'm not necessarily crazy about all this analytical stuff, but the analytics show that you have a higher chance to be able to win because you're taking more threes. All right, Joe, we're wrapping up. South Carolina, again, goes on to get the victory today against Arkansas, 80-66. They will play Auburn tomorrow at 3:30 Central Time, 2:30 Eastern on the SEC Network. We appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Hopefully the music wasn't too loud, and Intern Joe, he looks like he's in a closet, but he's doing his best out there and trying to give you guys different look here at the SEC tournament. Be sure to follow Gamecock Central all SEC tournament long. We'll be doing these GC live shows after each game as well. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Huber reporting here from Nashville at Bridgestone Arena. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Gamecocks, Auburn, 2:30 Eastern on the SEC Network. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Be sure to mix in a water tonight. The Gamecocks, they got a big one tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon.